Most recent updates we've seen have been incremental at best. There have been some new models, some new feature drops, lots of hype, but let's be honest, most of what we've seen recently from Claude Code, from Codex, from Gemini, they've been incremental improvements, not much real impact on how we actually build. That is until Cursor dropped version 2 last week, and I can tell you it has already changed how I actually work. Two features in particular have fundamentally changed my day-to-day workflow as a product builder. And I'm not even talking about the new built-in browser or the new voice mode in Cursor. And those are nice to have. But two features that I'll focus on today have had an observable, meaningful shift in my entire development workflow. So the big headline that you may have heard about Cursor 2.0 are the new dual modes, agent mode and editor mode. Now, this UI change alone wouldn't be revolutionary, but it does perfectly capture the two distinct ways that we actually work as builders. At least it does for me. You know, sometimes I need to delegate large features and let agents cook on those while I go work on something else or take a break. And other times I want to be hands-on, directing agents to make specific changes while I sit here and watch them work, and then I'll apply my final polish. The new agent mode and editor mode nail this paradigm. But look, Cursor has always been a code editor with agent superpowers. And we've already had ways to delegate autonomous work to tools like Codex or Claude Code or even background agents in Cursor. So what's actually different about what Cursor 2.0 introduced, and how is it changing how we work? That's what we'll get into in today's video. And if you're new here, I'm Brian Castle. I help professionals like you and me stay ahead of the curve when it comes to building with AI. And every Friday, I send out my builder briefing. That's my 5-minute read to help you stay sharp. You can get yours by going to buildermethods.com. And subscribers are always the first to know about my next live workshop where we talk about what's working right now when building with AI. So here's how I actually work. About half the time, I'm hands-on with my code base. And that looks like a continuous cycle where I give a prompt and then watch the agent work, and then I wait, and then I prompt again. But that waiting has added even more friction than I realized. Because even with how far today's models have come and their competence with handling complex multi-file changes, it's that waiting, it's that friction. It's real. Because when I'm in the flow, working directly in my code base, speed is everything. And so in my view, the killer new feature in Cursor 2.0 is much larger than just a feature. Cursor launched Composer 1. That's the first large language model from the team at Cursor. And calling this thing fast is an understatement. It feels 20, 30, 50 times faster than any other model on the market right now. You really have to experience the speed to understand the impact. Now, later in this video, I'll show you a bigger build, but for now, here's a taste. All right, so for now, let's see what the new Composer model in Cursor can do. I'll give it a pretty small change. So I've been working on my buildermethods.com site, and one thing that it's been missing is like a true about page. So I've got a lot of information about our free resources and the Builder Methods Pro membership and everything. I've got this little letter here, but I wanted like a dedicated about page that kind of speaks to what this brand is all about and my story behind it and everything. So I worked on writing that up over the weekend, and here is the artifact that I worked with Claude on creating, and I'm pretty happy with this. I'll probably edit it a little bit further, but this is a pretty good start for what I want to put into like an about page. So I'm going to just copy that. And let's go into, I'm starting in agent mode here. Notice over here, I'm selecting Composer 1. That is Cursor's agentic coding model. Yeah, so let's give this a try. So, and I also want to link to it from the footer. It should probably go in one of these. I'll just add it under free resources for now. Okay, so my prompt is pretty simple. Like I want to add an about page. This is the route. This is the controller I want to use. I'm asking it to use the same layout conventions that I've used on other pages. I want to add a link to it in the footer, and then here is the content for this page. And so I just pasted in the markdown from the Claude artifact. All right, so let's go ahead and kick this off. So it's reading and it's going. Look at this thing. Wow, done. Wow. I mean, let's take a look. You know what? I'm going to use the new built-in browser. So I'm going to do Command-Shift-B. Oops. This is one thing that's not so great about Cursor so far. I'm sure they're going to smooth this out. Is like every time I use keyboard shortcuts to change the panels, my panels layout gets all out of whack. So I hope that improves. So anyway, here we are. If I scroll down, okay, so here is my link to about, and yeah, it looks pretty good. I didn't want to have my face there, and these probably shouldn't be centered. All right, so not bad. Now, one of the really cool features of the new browser feature is this select element. So I can select an entire div and I can just refer to it. So I want to make all sections on the page the same width as this div. And it's just going to point to that, and it's sort of covered up there, but you can see it sort of references that particular div. All right, so I'm asking it to make a couple tweaks on that. So, I gave it a bunch of tweaks that hit like multiple spots, and it's already done with them. The content a little thinner. I'm going to change the colors on this. I might move this up into the hero, but I'll handle that like layout stuff a little bit later. So let's get on with the video. Now that was a simple example, of course, but yesterday Composer refactored hundreds of lines in my code base, made perfect UI changes, and it was done in under 20 seconds. And later yesterday, I needed to add a search feature across multiple models in my app. Again, Composer knocked it out in 20 seconds, one shot. Now, before today, those are examples of tasks that I would have spent time speccing out and delegating to an autonomous agent while I go grab coffee or take a walk. But now, given this new speed, I'm able to pull those tasks into my more active workflow when I'm sitting here crafting my product. Now, what's really interesting to me is that Cursor, a tools company, is getting into the model game. And I think that this could be the start of a trend where tool makers develop purpose-built models that are far superior at their job to be done. And in the case of Cursor releasing their first LLM, Composer 1, it makes perfect sense. They have unique training data from their massive user base of developers, and they can build a model that's optimized for only one thing: writing code really fast. And so Cursor doesn't have to handle all the other use cases that the models from OpenAI, Anthropic, Google need to serve. And I'd have to think that that's a big reason why Cursor's Composer model is just about as competent as Claude Sonnet 4.5, but way faster. Now, like I said, only about half my time is spent actually looking at my code base while my agents are working on it. The rest of the time, I want to give my agents a big new feature to build and have them go off and work autonomously while I work on other things or call it a day and come back in the morning. In Cursor 2.0, agent mode isn't just a UI update. I mean, it is, but it introduces something that I think is an even bigger deal. Now, we've had autonomous agents for some time now. Claude Code led the way when it pulled us away from our actual code, and we started trusting our coding agent to do more work on its own. Then Cursor launched background agents, OpenAI launched Codex, and so we've been trending into this era of letting agents do the work while we interface with the agents. But that only sticks if agents can actually deliver on what we ask of them. And that success rate is what drives our own adoption and our team's adoption of this more hands-off style of working. The truth is, no matter how great our specs are or how well we prompt, the more complex the task is, the more variation we see in the success rate from our agents. Because we know that we can give the same exact prompt to the same exact model multiple times, and you can get very different results. And so Cursor 2.0 introduced parallel agents, and it solves this problem beautifully. It's the easiest way to give the same prompt to multiple agents and have them work in parallel, and then compare their work and decide which one is best. All right, so let's run a demo where I'll show you how we can run multiple agents in parallel to build out the same thing. So for this demo, I am in Cursor 2.0. I'm in agent mode, and we're going to be building out a simple weather app. I have prepared a prompt. I'm going to pop that in here. Now, since this is a new app and a bunch of new features, and it's, not super small. Now, when we're building something that's like a medium to large size build, I do like to start with a plan, spec-driven development. The whole value of that is to make sure that the agents and our plan are in full alignment. And that's really important, especially when we're going to be spinning up multiple agents, because of course that's going to come with some added costs. And we don't want to, spin our wheels and waste our time and waste our money on having an incorrect plan from the outset. In this case, we'll be using Cursor's plan mode, which I think has gotten actually a lot better. I like it a lot. So I'm going to switch this to plan mode. And of course, you could use something like Agent OS that does a really good job of developing even more in-depth specs and task lists. But Cursor's plan mode works pretty well. And I also find that Sonnet 4.5 is a little bit better at planning big builds and also asking really smart, clarifying questions. Composer is okay with that, but not quite as good as Sonnet. I think that's sort of the case in general across the board. Sonnet 4.5 is still my go-to model for most things, but man, that speed from Composer is unreal. Okay, so we're going to start with just one single agent creating a plan, and then we'll get into spinning up 3 agents to build out the plan. Okay, so I'm going to answer these clarifying questions. Okay, so I'm just going to review this plan before we get started. And again, this is a really important step to make sure that we're on the same page and that we're going to give all 3 agents the right instructions to kind of try to set them up for success. We're going to build this out on the home page. We're going to display some weather data. We'll have a responsive layout. I think this is looking good, and we have a pretty simple to-do list that Cursor set up for us. Okay, so that is good. Now let's go ahead and start building this. I'm going to start a new agent. And so now here is where we're going to spin up multiple agents to build the same thing. So first of all, let's just mention this plan. I'll just say build this. That's probably not even necessary, but just sort of a habit. So I am referencing this plan in the prompt itself. And then we're going to come here and select the model, and we'll go to use multiple models. So this is how we can start to spin up multiple agents. As you can see, I have 3 models checked here. We have one for Composer 1. That is Cursor's new model. We're going to use that as one of them. We'll use Sonnet 4.5. That's really my go-to in general for most things. I still think it's just slightly better in terms of quality and capability than all the rest of the models right now, but Composer 1 is just so much faster that adds a lot of value as well. And it's very close in quality in my experience so far. And then in the 3rd agent, we'll try GPT-5 Codex, which I also think is pretty good. And I go to that sometimes. Yeah. And also, we have 1x set for each of these. I could go in here and multiply it and have like 2 different Sonnet 4.5s and 2 Composer 1s. And every single agent is going to have a slightly different result, a different take on this prompt. That's the nature of large language models, but they all will be working off of the same plan, and we're going to start them off all at the same time, and we're going to see how they work side by side. Let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so now we have this nice interface here. 1, 2, 3, I can easily tab between them. I do wish that Cursor would have a little bit better keyboard navigation with these. I hope that comes along, because I like to have everything available on the keyboard. And so far, I haven't found an easy way to bind these to a key mapping. Wow. I mean, Composer 1 is already actually finished. And Sonnet 4.5 is still 0 of 3 to-dos. Looks like Codex is sort of asking for permission to proceed. And I'm just going to say proceed. Now, by the way, before we start reviewing the code, let me just show you exactly what's going on, because it could be really confusing when we're using Git worktrees. Like, where are all these agents actually making edits to which files, and where do they actually live on our system? So to make this clear, I always like to open up Finder and just sort of like get oriented with what we're actually looking at here. So on the left side, I'm looking at my actual project. We called it Weatheroo, and here is the Rails app. These files, if I go back in here and I go into editor mode, these files right here, that is the Rails application that I've already spun up for this project. But none of these 3 agents actually have made any edits on our core Rails app. So for example, if I look at it in the browser right now, I still see my default hello world root page. So I'm not yet seeing any of the work from any of the agents, right? So where's that work actually being done? Well, if I open up Finder again, over here on the right side, I go into my system level, and then I'll go into the Cursor folder. That's a hidden folder on your system. Then go into worktrees, and then you'll see a folder that was automatically created matching the same name as the project. In this case, it's Weatheroo. And then in there, I have 3 folders with these sort of like random code names. Each of these is a worktree. So a Git worktree is a complete replica. It's a complete copy of your entire code base. All the files, all the folders, they get copied into their own respective folders here. So each of these folders corresponds to each of these agents. So in agent mode, I can toggle between them here, and that's exactly the same as in editor mode. Now, running multiple agents with Git worktrees isn't new, and I did a video on this with Claude Code months ago, but the process was complicated, unintuitive, and I had to whip up a script to make it easier. It was kind of a pain. Cursor 2.0 makes it simple. Multiple agents working simultaneously on different branches, all managed through a clean interface. Okay, so let's see how we did. So here's how you can actually preview the work of each of the individual agents and compare the results one by one. So you can do this in either mode, agent mode or editor mode. Let's go into editor mode here, and we can pick an agent. Let's start with Sonnet 4.5. So it looks like all three of them are complete now. And again, by default, the main branch is still showing our default hello world page. So I'm going to go ahead and apply all from the Sonnet 4.5 agent. And I can see that I have, because now it says reapply. So if I refresh here, okay, so we're getting a failed to fetch location name, and I'm seeing some errors in the console there. So that's an issue, and maybe we'll work through that. But before we do, let's see how the other agents did. Let's undo. Now, what that did was it sort of pulled those changes back, and now we're back to our original state. So now let's flip over to the middle agent, Composer 1. So here, let's apply that. And this one's having trouble as well. If we retry, okay, so we're getting it looks like some cores errors. Okay, maybe third time is a charm. Let's see how we did with GPT-5 Codex. I'm going to apply that one. By the way, I undid the Composer one first. Went over to GPT-5 and I applied that. And so now, okay, so this is actually loading. Okay, so this is actually working. This is my actual temperature and weather at my current location. I see my next 24 hours. That's pretty good. I've got a 7-day forecast. I actually really like the design. It's nice and clean. Let's see how we did with like a mobile layout if we collapse it down. Okay, not bad. I don't love like the current location coordinates. I'd like it to actually show my city name. So maybe that could be like an edit that we would roll with. But GPT-5 Codex, I would not have guessed that one had the best first draft out of these three. But you know what? I bet it's something probably sort of simple to fix these errors. So let's go undo that. Let's go back to the Composer 1 version, and I will apply that one. So now we're back on this version, which is showing an error. Let's see if we can get this working. So I'm going to screenshot all of this. And I'm using Clean Shot for that on the Mac, which I love. Drop that in here. And, we have the Composer agent activated. And let's just, give it that and see if we can get this working. Okay, so there we go. It was able to fix that. So now we have, this is the version from Composer 1, which is very nice. I like it. A lot lighter. This one is actually showing my town. I live here in Orange, Connecticut. This is the weather here. This is the 24-hour forecast. I've got my 7-day forecast. Let's see how we did on the responsive layout. Okay, not bad. Yeah, that works. I didn't ask it to do a dark mode, but let's see if it handled that. No, it did not. Okay. Yeah, it basically built everything that I wanted it. Okay, so now over on Sonnet, I actually did have it fix the error there, and I reloaded, and now Sonnet 4.5, this is what it came up with. This is now working, although I must say I'm not as happy with the overall design. It has that very typical sort of vibe-coded, big rounded corners, lots of drop shadows kind of vibe. So yeah, but it does work. It's got the weather. It's got my hourly forecast, 7-day. Let's see, refresh weather. A nice little loading animation. It doesn't have my actual location name, so that's probably something that could be fixed. Yeah. So I reapplied the Composer agent's work, and I think I like this the best. It has all the functionality that I would need, although I must say I did like the design work from the GPT-5 Codex one. So that was pretty nice. My next step at this stage would be to choose one and then keep working off of that. So for example, I think that this one with Composer 1 actually ended up being like the best one to work with. Just as an example, my next step might be to add like a dark mode. So let's go ahead and see if it can do that. Please automatically support both light mode and dark mode, and include a toggle switch at the top for the user to switch between them. I'm just having so much fun watching the Composer 1 agent work. I mean, just look at how fast it is actually implementing these changes. It's unbelievable to me. Done. Okay, so we have our little switcher up there. Nice, we've got dark mode and light mode. That works. I like it. Now, running parallel agents multiplies your costs, of course, and that's why I tend to be more selective in using this feature. I use it for more complex, critical builds where the productivity gain justifies the costs. So the team at Cursor clearly understands our two different modes of working, and they built that right into their product, which I love. So I really do think that this Cursor 2.0 update represents a real turning point in how we build. And it's been quite a year when it comes to how our workflow as builders keeps evolving. And spec-driven development is one of those new paradigms that I've talked a lot about on this channel, and I think it's still relevant, especially in agent mode in Cursor 2.0. So if you're not familiar with spec-driven development, then I want you to see my other video on how spec-driven development works in the real world. But before you head there, hit subscribe so you don't miss my next video on building with AI. So thanks for watching. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you over there next. Let's keep building.